Hello, my beautiful beings of light. This is literally the fourth time I've tried to record this video because it's a pretty monster topic and it's on ancestral trauma. Really, I'm going to explain to you what that means and just give you a short example of how it can show up in your life and what you need to do to start the journey of breaking that ancestral trauma. Ancestral trauma is lessons passed down through the generation that have a negative impact on your mindset. I'm going to give just one instance. Let's say your mother was raised by a single mother and your grandmother continuously told your mother all the time, you don't need no man. You're fine on your own. You don't need anybody to help you. You're strong. You're powerful. You can do it on your own, right? It sounds fantastic. But what you're putting out is the fact that you are then telling that person, you don't need help from anybody. We all need help from people, right? The whole point of us to build what we want with our lives, we need help from other people, right? Oprah didn't become a billionaire on her own. A bunch of it was her, but the way she keeps her billions is having a power team behind her, right? But if you have a mother who continuously tells you, don't ask for help, you can do this on your own, right? It creates a mental trauma in a way because you feel like any sort of emotion is weakness. You feel like asking for any help is a weakness, which is causing you detriment in your day-to-day life. That is ancestral trauma. Recognizing that your mother may be doing it from a place of love because her mother was doing it from a place of love, but her mother was doing it based on what she learned, right? Basically, you have to meet people where they're at when it comes to these sort of things. So when it's lessons that they're trying to teach you, it's because they learned lessons along the way from their parents that maybe, oh, I don't want my daughter to live the life I live, so I'm going to do things differently. But in trying to do things differently, it's just a different type of trauma that you're handing down to your child, right? Or it's the exact same one you're handing down to your child. If it's, mental health issues, our children, rather your children, they'll mirror exactly what you do, right? And it's more than what you say. It's really a lot of it is also, of course, what you do. So what lessons are being handed down to your parents? And just, it's ancestral trauma is such a beast of a topic, but that's an example of a form of ancestral trauma is the idea of you're strong, you don't need anybody to help you, right? That creates its own problems because it also raises anxiety because when the focus is fully on you to do everything yourself with nobody helping you, that's extremely stressful. Also, you don't reach the goal that you want to get to in a quicker time when you don't ask for help, but that's a whole other topic. All this to say, ancestral trauma is a real thing and you have to be the one to break it. You have to be the one who reaches the consciousness to know that, you know what, my parents were coming from a place from what they were taught. And it's up to me to break it. If it's a generational trauma of abuse, you do not have to apologize for it because here's the thing. Understanding where that trauma, that ancestral trauma comes from does not excuse the trauma that was done to you. I'm going to say that again. And I may make a whole other post about it, but I will say it again. Understanding your parents' or grandparents' trauma does not excuse the trauma that they put on you. Okay? This is not to say, oh, well, my father abused me. And yeah, I get that his father abused him. Understanding where your father came from and where his flaws are does not excuse any abuse that he gave on you. It is just for you to step back and understand, okay, I'm going to break the cycle. I am not going to let that happen. I'm not going to teach those same things to my generation, whenever I have kids or whatever the case may be. Or if you already have kids, I'm not going to be the one to teach that. I'm going to break that cycle. If it's something that you notice, anything, the minute you start to really take a step back and notice your parents, notice your grandparents, how they interact with each other, or just your parents generally speaking, how they show up to you. The minute you become aware of it and you're like, okay, I can see that she did that from that place, but I also know how it affected me in a traumatic way. And I know how it's really stopped me. So to step back and be like, she was literally a project of her society. She's a product rather. She's a product of her society. She's a product of how she was brought up, which is completely different than where I'm at, right? It does not, again, excuse the pain that they caused you in your life, But it is a way to take a step back and break it, because you cannot break a cycle until you become conscious of the cycle itself. You cannot break a cycle until you become conscious of the cycle itself, right? You have to find a way to be conscious of it. And now is the time, especially if you are quarantined with your mother or your father. Take this time to really know, like, okay, what triggers do I have, right? If you already know the flaws that they have, try and say, maybe try and have a conversation, like an open conversation of, why do you feel like that's right for me? Or if it's a case of abuse, because there's a lot of domestic abuse has gone up a lot in the quarantine, which is really terrible. But even finding out more information about that, as far as why are you the way you are, right? Tell me about my grandparents. Tell me about, it can be something actually like that. Like maybe tell me about my grandparents. And from what they say about their parents, you can maybe then start to identify where they picked up their ancestral trauma and how it has now affected your life, right? You don't have to get into a confrontation with your parent about it, because they're going to be combative. When you start working on your own ancestral trauma, it's going to show up. They're going to react to that energy of you trying to break it. Even if you say, oh, I don't want to make the same mistakes you did, or, oh, I want to teach my child a different way. Great if it brings you catharsis by telling them that, and great. Otherwise, this is more just about recognizing the trauma that you're seeing, recognizing how did they come to be the person they are. Once again, not excusing the pain that they caused you, but how did they come to be who they are? Because a lot of times in understanding how our parents came to be, how they were, we're able to not be triggered as much by what they say, because we're like, oh man, you know what? I know what's good for me. And I know she's or he is only responding like that because of how they were raised, right? One really great thing that you can start doing now for your next generation and the generations to come is start journaling. I cannot tell you how amazing it was when I found that my grandmother had been journaling for years, and I got to actually read some of her journal entries. All of her journal entries actually really opened my eyes to a ancestral trauma that I didn't realize we had, right? So, and that is just from reading her words. So I think it's so important. Also, journaling generally just helps you open your mind. It helps you get all of your pain and everything and all your thoughts down out of your head onto paper. It's a wonderful thing to do, but also think of it as a way for you to keep your memory and your history alive for future generations so that they can see, because we all have shit that we hold on to. And I guarantee you're probably going to teach your kids something that will be its own form of trauma, but you just have to hope that it's as little trauma as possible, but it's a way for them to understand where you came from, to understand where their parents came from. It's just a way to heal. Each generation, you want to heal more and more. So if you can break the chain of trauma right now and start to really heal, and heal how you interact with other people, heal how you interact with your kids, I think it can really be a beautiful step. So one step would be to, as I say, start journaling and write it down. Write down your thoughts. Write down how you were breaking through your ancestral trauma, because it's also really good for your next generation to know, this is what my parents went through. This is what my grandparents went through. And keep in mind the era that your parents and your grandparents and ancestors grew up in, right? Because that's a huge factor around it too. Particularly women. The era that they grew up in, how much knowledge did they even have? How much of a voice did they have to speak up about certain things? Where was their mindset at? So you have to factor in all these different things of how they were taught, the way they were taught, and kind of and it helps you meet people where they're at. So yes, maybe your mother will always think that asking help is for help is a weakness. That doesn't mean that you have to buy into it. You can just say, you know what? I recognize that I know why you think the way you think. I wish you didn't think that way. I wish you realized that if you asked for help, your life would be so much easier. You would have so much more ease in your life. But I also recognize that I cannot change your life for you. That is another thing. You cannot change the trauma for them. If they want to heal from their own trauma, fucking fantastic. But this is for you to heal. This is not for you to heal your parents. If your parents are healed through you healing, fantastic, again. But it is not up to you to take on the mantle of healing your parents' trauma. That is something that they have to do on their own. It's part of their own journey. All you can do is recognize that and work through it and perhaps live by example so that they can see, okay, let's follow the example of asking for help. Okay, she continuously asks people for help, and look how fast her life is projected into a place of abundance that she always wanted, right? And that is by asking for help. So perhaps you living by example is a way for them to start healing on their own as well. So keep in mind, you cannot take on healing your parents' trauma. That is for them to do. This is for you to recognize and be conscious of what's happening so that you are able to heal yourself. And that's what this time of chrysalis is. I spoke about chrysalis and, the pressure that we're in right now to be butterflies on the other side of it. But we are in this if we're quarantined with our parents or we still see them all the time, our family is our biggest trigger. But it's interesting to then learn, how did you become the way you did? And how can I now recognize that and be conscious of it within my own self and stop the cycle from continuing to the next generation? You have to be the one to break it. This is a time of spiritual consciousness and awakening. So you need to start waking up and taking control of your life. Okay. I went on for longer than I needed to about this, but as I said, it's a beast of a topic. If you want me to talk more about ancestral trauma and how that shows up in your life, I am more than willing to talk. So I am nothing but a DM away. And so, yeah, I love you guys. Be strong. Once again, if you need to talk or have any questions, just hit me up. Okay? Bye.